Okay, after a long day of doing lots of videos, this is my last video for the day, which is cool. I've made a lot of things today. Anyway, this is a video which I want to discuss the very short paper that was written by Edmund Gettier and was published in an anthology by John Pollock in 1986, and I believe it was originally the article was originally published, I believe, in Analysis in like the '63, maybe. I'm not quite sure. It was in the early '60s, I think. It's a very short paper, and it presents the Gettier problem, which is a problem which, basically sets the stage for all of the rest of contemporary epistemology following that. Okay, and this is a short little paper here, and it's that long really, and I'm reading out of Empirical Knowledge Readings in Contemporary Epistemology, edited by Paul K. Moser. I think it's a pretty good anthology. It's the problem. The paper's called "Is Justified True Belief Knowledge?" because it's generally been granted, and just basically whatever that is what it is. It's been said always that justified true belief constitutes knowledge. That if you have a belief and it happens to be true, and you're justified on having it, then it's knowledge. And this one tiny little paper, just created this huge problem. It just basically crippled epistemology. And it made it. It has just recently been been talked about like a little bit less. It caused so much so much craziness in the field of epistemology. So he says various attempts have been made in recent years to state necessary and sufficient conditions for someone's knowing a given proposition, and he gives three takes on what knowledge is. First, we have A, which is S knows that P, if and only if P is true. S is a person, P is a proposition. S knows that P, if and only if P is true. S believes that P, and S is justified in believing that P, and that's knowledge. But then he's kind of gonna throw a wrench in this whole thing. And then when he gives Roger Chisholm's formulation of this, and I believe it's in the book that Chisholm wrote called Perception. Chisholm says that S knows that P if and only if S accepts P, S has adequate evidence for P, and P is true. And then I believe Ayer in knowing is having the right to be sure. S knows that P if and only if P is true. S is sure that P is true, and S has the right to be sure that P is true. And he's arguing that the first one is false, and also that the rest of them are false as well. And he gives cases. If you heard in any philosophy class, about Smith, or a theory of knowledge class, or a epistemology class about Smith and Jones cases, this comes from him. Comes from Gettier. I should begin by noting 2 points. First, in that sense of justified, in which S is being justified in believing P is a necessary condition of S's knowing that P, it is possible for a person to be justified in believing a proposition which is in fact false. Second, for any proposition P, if S is justified in believing P, and P entails Q, and S deduces Q from P, and S accepts Q as a result of this deduction, then S is justified in believing Q. He presents two cases in which the conditions given in the first one and the very first case as I gave before are true for some proposition. Suppose that Smith and Jones have applied for a certain job, and suppose that Smith has strong evidence for the following conjunctive proposition. Jones has strong evidence for this. Jones is the man who will get the job, and Jones has 10 coins in his pocket. Smith's evidence for D, for the previous thing I said, might be that the president of the company assured him that Jones would in the end be selected, and that he, Smith, had counted the coins in Jones's pocket 10 minutes ago. And that proposition D entails the man who will get the job has 10 coins in his pocket. Let's suppose that Smith sees the entailment from D to E. The last thing I said was E, and accepts E on the grounds of D, for which he has strong evidence. In this case, Smith is clearly justified in believing that E is true. But imagine further that unknown to Smith, he himself, not Jones, will get the job, and also unknown to Smith, he himself has 10 coins in his pocket. So proposition E, that says that the man who will get the job has 10 coins in his pocket, is then true, though proposition D, from which Smith inferred E, is false. In our example, then, all the following are true. E is true. Smith believes that E is true, and that Smith is justified in believing that E is true. But it is equally clear that Smith does not know that E is true, for E is true in virtue of the number of coins in Smith's pocket. So he has justified true belief that the man who will get the job has 10 coins in his pocket. And that's true. And he's justified in believing that. But it's not strong enough for knowledge because it's inferred from a false it's entailed from a false proposition entails it. The false proposition, Jones is the man who will get the job, and Jones has 10 coins in his pocket. So even though the president said Smith that Jones will get the job, and Smith counted the coins in Jones' pocket, this allows Smith to infer that the man who will get the job has 10 coins in his pocket. And that thing that is entailed, the man who will get the job has 10 coins in his pocket, is justified true belief. However, because of the fact that it's inferred from that false proposition, and it's not strong enough to be knowledge. So he falsely believes that the man who will get the job is Jones, when it is in fact himself. Let's suppose that Smith has strong evidence for the following proposition. Jones owns a Ford, which is F. Smith's evidence might be that Jones has at all times in the past within Smith's memory owned a car and always a Ford, and that Jones has just offered Smith a ride while driving a Ford. Let us imagine now that Smith has another friend, Brown, of whose whereabouts he is totally ignorant. Smith selects three place names at quite random and constructs the following three propositions. G, either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Boston. H, either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Barcelona. I, either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Brest-Litovsk. Now this is the introduction of a disjunction. This is the stupidest rule ever if you take a logic class. because if I say I am 24, or I am not 24, that is a true proposition, because if one of the disjuncts is true, the whole thing is true. If you say either it is Tuesday or it is not Tuesday, it is it's always either Tuesday or not Tuesday. Each of these propositions is entailed by F. Imagine that Smith realizes the entailment of each of these propositions he has constructed by F, and proceeds to accept G, H, and I on the basis of F. Smith has correctly inferred G, H, and I from a proposition for which he has strong evidence. Smith is therefore completely justified in believing each of these three propositions. Smith, of course, has no idea where Brown is, and really doesn't matter if he knows where Brown is, because it's the rule of the disjunction. But imagine now that two further conditions hold. First, Jones does not own a Ford, but is at present driving a rented car, and second, by sheer coincidence and entirely unknown to Smith, the place mentioned in proposition H happens to really be the place where Brown is. If these two conditions hold, then Smith does not know that H is true, even though H is true, and Smith does not believe that H is true, and that Smith is justified in believing that H is true. These two examples show that the definition of A, which is S knows that P, if and only if blah blah, does not state a sufficient condition for someone knowing a given proposition. The same cases with appropriate changes will suffice to show that neither definition B nor definition C does so either. So these two cases basically show you that there are cases where one can be justified and hold the belief that is true. However, it's not solid enough because it's entailed from a proposition that is false. It's not quite knowledge, and the proposition Jones owns a Ford entails either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Boston, either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Barcelona, and either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Brest-Litovsk. It just so happens that either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Barcelona is true. So it's just showing cases in which justified true belief doesn't make knowledge. There are cases in which it doesn't get all the way to knowledge, and this is entirely what creates a huge problem in epistemology, and it causes one to have to figure out what knowledge is, what justification is, and the structure of it even further. We have, before Gettier, the whole field has been doing that, but it becomes something just something I can't even describe. It's just like really crazy how things changed following Gettier. Everybody went crazy following the publishing of this paper in the journal Analysis. If you think I've done something incorrect, or if you think I've messed something up, please comment on the side here. I'd love to discuss it with you. And if you want to discuss this at all, or if you have a question, please also comment there as well. Thank you.